How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Fantasy Filmball, and today we're going to be talking about Guillermo Del Toro's Pinocchio. So this next one that we're talking about is one of my favorite films of the entire year. One of my favorite films, possibly of all time. It's a movie that I feel like is made specifically for me, and I saw it a few weeks ago. I talked about it a little bit on the show, but this is your first time seeing it. So, Dylan, what did you think about this movie? Let's just talk general thoughts. How did you feel about this? I know I was stronger on it than you are.
That's not to say I wasn't very receptive. I like this movie a lot. I think it's very beautifully crafted. It has some amazing candid visuals. A very emotional movie throughout. I know I had heard some stuff about being emotional. I was not really prepared for how emotionally powerful some specific sequences in this movie were. And I think it has some great social commentary it weaves in to make it a kind of a fresher take. It's not just the generic Pinocchio story you know through and through. It adds some new stuff, which I think is very much appreciated because this is a story that we hear very often. I think this is the third or fourth adaptation in the last 4 years, so it's good to present new things to the table. But if I had to highlight one thing from this movie, outside the obvious of its visuals, would be David Bradley's portrayal of Geppetto. This may be my favorite voice acting performance of all time, behind Andy Serkis' motion capture for the Planet of the Apes movies. He was brilliant. The facial work they did for the puppet was amazing, and it's one that I think will only get better on rewatches.
I think you summed it up perfectly. That this is a film that it's incredibly emotional, and it delves into a different side of the Pinocchio story than what we've seen, because we've seen so many goddamn Pinocchio movies over the past few years. I watched the fucking Tom Hanks Disney one. It was awful. It's so bad. It's so awful. It's like the most soulless. It feels like an algorithm wrote the movie, and it's actually really funny because the entire movie through this fucking Robert Zemeckis Pinocchio, I'm like, okay, this is just like the most soulless garbage. And then the whale comes out, and it's like this Lovecraftian creature with tentacles and like multiple mouths, and like it looks like a monster of true horror. And this movie, I think the whale did a little bit of that too, but yeah, there's really no comparison between this and other movies. There was an Italian film that got a makeup nomination a few years ago, also Pinocchio, and that was horrifying in many ways. But Guillermo del Toro, I think, understands fairy tales better than anyone. He's made two of the best modern fairy tales that exist, both in Pan's Labyrinth and The Shape of Water, which I would classify both of those more than fantasy movies as fairy tales. And he understands what it is about these stories that have made them timeless, what it is about these stories that have made them last forever, and why people still talk about them and why people still come back. And the reason why it's Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, it's not just to show, this is his one in opposition to the other Pinocchio movies that have come out this year. It's really because his unique spin on the story is there. This is a film where Pinocchio gets inducted into a fascist boot camp instead of going to Pleasure Island. It's a film where Pinocchio is literally crudely crafted, like someone just took a slab of wood and just, nailed it together. He's not the beautifully painted little wooden boy from Disney. He's like a little bit horrifying. He's a bit of a monster. But the thing that makes this film so spectacular is that Del Toro understands that any fairy tale needs to have darkness and light coexisting, and it's about finding that light inside of the darkness, inside of this dark tale. And as much as this film is like pretty twisted and pretty dark at times, and will probably give a lot of kids nightmares, I'd say that this is the most wholesome movie since Paddington 2.
Interesting. That's a very interesting take. I didn't really think about that, but after hearing that now, I can definitely see that angle. I don't know if about the most, but I think it does have some very wholesome aspects where I think it could relate to a lot of different people from various ages, whether they are very young who may not get some of more of the adult themes that Del Toro and co-director Mark Gustafson present to the table, but there's still stuff for the adults too that they can really resonate with, whether that is some of the stuff with Pinocchio's connection to Geppetto and some of the other father, son, and parent, child relationships that are in the film, and some of the just there's a lot going on here. But if you had to point out one thing that was like the highlight of the film to you, was it a specific tech, or was it like a performance, or was it a song? Because there are songs in this. This is a musical.
This is a musical. Honestly, the music was the only thing that I was a little bit underwhelmed with. I still really liked the music, but it wasn't like spectacular. So if I had to point out one thing that really stood out to me, it'd be the production design. If I look at this in comparison to Guillermo Del Toro's other films, you see a lot of comparisons between it. Like this alongside Nightmare Alley, there's a lot of things that look very similar, a lot of design things that you can see his mark on this film. There's a lot of things about it that remind me of Pan's Labyrinth in the design of it. The design of the creatures can at times remind me of The Shape of Water. Like Pinocchio himself, that little Pinocchio doll would look perfect up alongside the creature from The Shape of Water. And, you know, so that production design really is the star of the show in my mind. And the animation is incredible too. But yeah, visually, this is just such a stunning film. And to look at this alongside other stop motion films, truly this craft is so underappreciated. And I think that Del Toro did it so incredibly well here, with so much respect for the form. He's never made a stop motion animated film before, but you would never know. Like this one, I would actually say feels like it came from the brain of a stop motion master, even more so than Wendell and Wild did this year, which actually came from the mind of a stop motion master.
Definitely. I still haven't seen Wendell and Wild yet, so I can't do the comparison there, but this movie was very good. While I didn't love it as much as you did, still a very solid movie for me. I would give it a very, very strong 8. It's one I cannot wait to watch again. I got the pleasure of seeing it in a theater, which I know you did as well. I know a lot of people won't be able to see this until it hits Netflix, or won't be able to see it until it's like on their TV or their computer. I think the theater experience really helped elevate it, but I think this is a movie that still will work at home. I think there's things that will still pop out and will still be amazing and breathtaking, whether it is visually or conceptually or story-wise from a viewing experience at home. However, we've both seen this now, and this is an Oscars show here that we do. Netflix has a lot on their slate this year, and everyone's been like, what is Netflix doing? I know you and I were early on the train to say this is the number one for animated feature. It wasn't Lightyear, it wasn't anything else. It was this, and that looks pretty true still. However, for picture, we haven't had many animated movies ever get in the Best Picture, and no animated movies that weren't Disney Pixar.
We've had one that wasn't Disney Pixar, because Beauty and the Beast was the first one. And that got in largely on the back of the fact that it was the first animated film to use CGI. It was still hand-drawn, but they used some CGI sequences, so it was a technical marvel that got in. And then after that, yes, there's been Up, there's been Toy Story 3, and now, in my opinion, there's Pinocchio. I think this is getting into Best Picture. I think that people will take it very seriously because it's Del Toro, because Del Toro's been going around talking about how animation isn't just for kids. Animation is not, you know, the thing that you turn on to numb your kid's brain. Animation is film, and this is film. And people will watch the film because they respect Del Toro. And when they see it, I don't think that there's any way you can see this film and go, oh, that was just kids shit. You know, I'm not going to pay attention to that. That was just baby movie for babies. So personally, I think that if people see it and take it seriously, this is getting in a few places at least. I can see it getting in for Best Picture. Personally, it's in my top 10. I could also see it getting in screenplay, score, song, production design. There was some talk about VFX, but I don't know what the VFX was here. I think people are just saying that because Kubo and the Two Strings got a visual effects nomination. But that film also had like a lot of action sequences, and this one does not. So I don't know. What do you see its chances as for Oscars? Because I know I've had it in my 10 for the past few weeks. You haven't had it in your top 10, but do you now?
So when I met you before, it was just the Disney or Pixar's. Like Beauty and the Beast was a Disney movie, and Up and Toy Story were the Pixar ones. Here, I still think that could be an issue. It's just like, yes, people will care because it's Del Toro, but still, will they be like, an animated movie needs to be here. I think this is their push though. I don't think it's Bardo. I don't think it's white noise. I don't think it's anything else. I think this is it. Just the issue is, can the Academy at large let it get in? And what I think it needs something to drop. Whether that is a She Said, that is an Elvis, that is a Babylon, that is a Way of Water, that is a Tar or something. I don't think Tar will drop, but just giving examples of movies that could. One of those would have to drop for this to get in. And at the moment, it looks like She Said could be a little bit because of its shaky box office, but we've seen in the past, box office doesn't really matter for movies like that. Elvis has a chance because of how divisive it is, but also it has a really good path. Way of Water seems pretty undeniable, but obviously there's no locks or anything like that. No one's seen it, but it has the technical prowess to maybe get its way in the picture. And then that leaves Tar, which seems like the critics' favorite of the year. So that seems like a good angle. So I think all those movies are fighting for that spot. I think its best chances if Babylon comes out, and Babylon is so divisive, and so people like, I love the text, but the movie itself is just blah. Like there's not many people giving it 10s, 9s like there are with Elvis's case, because that's another spectacle type movie where people are really loving it, really digging it, but it also has people who really hate it. So I think Pinocchio is clearly 10 or 11. Just at the end of the day, is it 10 or is it 11?
Honestly, this is going to be one that, especially with Strange World, flopping a little bit. Not flopping, but like not performing as well as people expect. This is the undeniable animation winner, and people are going to see it. The question is, do they take it seriously, and do they remember to vote for it in other categories? I think they will, but we'll have to see. One thing that I will say for certain is this is going to inspire a whole new generation of freaky ass kids going to Hot Topic for shit. Like, you know how Nightmare Before Christmas like inspired a whole trend of like weird goth kids that like idolize Halloween? Pinocchio is gonna do that too. There's gonna be a whole new wave of like freaky goth kids.
Interesting.
That's my biggest
forward to that,
prediction.
but we'll see. We'll see it come up.
We'll have to see. Like I can see this really connecting with the youth. But one thing, even more certain than that, this is going to give kids nightmares. I don't know. We'll have to see, because maybe parents will revolt against this movie and be like, that could be a narrative killer. Like, oh my god, this movie is so inappropriate. How dare Netflix release it? I don't know. It's not inappropriate. It's very wholesome, but it is quite freaky and quite dark. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us for our discussion on Pinocchio. What do you think? Can this movie make it into Best Picture? Can it make it into other categories? What categories? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to tune in for our next episodes on Bardo and our predictions. So stick around.